You're gonna make bass that sounds interesting to the ear. It gives the track a foundation to live on, and at the same time, makes it feel like things are still in motion. Even though you're dealing with long static notes, there's still that sense that, wow, this is going somewhere. When it comes to ambient, the presence of a good bass sound is extremely important. Not only does it give the track a proper foundation to live upon, but in a genre dominated by mid-range elements such as pads or sequences, the presence of a good bass can take an average sounding track into something that sounds solid and professional. So in today's video, we're gonna break down an existing bass patch so you can see and hear what a good ambient bass sounds like, and ultimately be able to create a good ambient bass preset on your own. So if you like this kind of video, make sure you smash that like button on the way in and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And if you want to learn more and you want more presets, I'm gonna drop 5 ambient bass presets on Patreon directly following the release of this video. There on Patreon, you're gonna find tons of extra tutorials, extra presets, one-on-one ambient coaching, and so much more. By supporting me on Patreon, not only are you getting the best deal on ambient content around, but you're helping to support this channel so I can keep making videos just like this one. That being said, let's get into it, the anatomy of an ambient bass. Enjoy. All right, so here we are inside of Ableton Live 11. Now the goal with today's video is to break down the anatomy of an ambient bass. And to do that, we're gonna break down an existing patch that I found to be a good example of what ambient bass should sound like. And I've got an example track here. So what we're gonna do is just listen to the example track, and then on the other side, we're gonna break down this patch so you guys can get a better idea of what it means to create an ambient bass. Here we go. So there we go. Now this patch is from an upcoming sound set on Material Again. This is from Distant Origin by Parallax 5. Now I chose this bass sound because it's a really good example of the type of bass sound that I usually want to create. And it's really great for ambient music because it has, some movement, but not too much movement. There's a lot going on here that I love about the patch. And so that's why I'm showcasing it here today. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that this is a mono bass, right? So it's got one voice. It's a one voice synth. I usually say keep all your basses mono below a certain point. In Ableton, we have the utility plugin, which you can see over here. I usually click this bass mono button, and everything under say 100, 120, that's a good place to start by clicking that. That means that every sound or every frequency under that point is gonna be mono, the rest is gonna be stereo. It's a handy way to do that. You don't always have to do that because not everybody uses Ableton Live or has a tool like that. However, you can put your bass in mono just by giving it one voice, right? This patch is so good because it takes advantage of that fact that it is a mono bass, but it does use Unison right here. So you can see that we have 5 voices of Unison up here, 5 voices down here, and when you play the track, you can feel that movement, right? And look up here on the oscilloscope. You can see that it's got subtle motion, it's moving around. It's great. Now, as for the rest of the track, this is just something that I whipped up for this demo, but you can hear how well that bass sort of sticks out, but not too much. It's just kind of right there guiding the track along, all right? Now, the main feature of this bass sound, which is really cool, I love doing this technique, is this master LFO, right? It's like the master LFO that controls a lot of different aspects of the sound, which in turn kind of glues it all together, okay? So as you can see here, LFO 1 is driving 12 destinations, which is pretty nuts. You can do that in Vital, but it's driving 12 different destinations. It's set to trigger mode, and it's set to 4 of a 1. So that's a nice slow movement, right? But let's break down where this is actually going, okay? So the things that LFO1 is driving, you can kind of see them all over the place, right? You see, I'm gonna solo this track. Let me just solo this. You can see that it's driving the wavetable position here, right? These wavetables, to me, they're probably, with the exception of this one, actually this is a probably resynthesized wavetable. This one is not, this is just customly made. And the other one is a resynthesized wavetable. But look how the LFO just drives the position here. And because it's a slow LFO, it's doing it over time, right? So that's interesting to me. Now, to get the exact details of what this is actually driving, just go over to the mod matrix. You can see LFO1 is driving the filter cutoff here, oscillator 1 and 2's waveframe, like I said. It's driving the distortion amount. That's interesting. It's driving the filter 2's cutoff. We have the spectral morph here. Distortion filter cutoff. I mean, there's just so many that thing. I mean, he just stacked it full of all these different destinations, but in turn, it keeps it unified, right? So you can see the filters are moving at the same speed. The wavetables are moving. All of these distortion modes are moving. So this one's getting a little bit of harmonic stretch, just a little bit, just a subtle amount, right? This one's getting a performance scale right here in the negative, which is interesting. Okay. Let's go over to the effects section. You can see that it's driving the distortion cutoff filter here and just subtle drive amounts. That's such an interesting technique. So you have that LFO that's just moving along, and then it's getting a little more gritty as the spectral distortion spreads out over here. You can see that the effects start to amp up, right? So interesting to me. I love that. Cool. So now let's break down some of the macro assignments here. We have an FM, right? So the FM is not true FM, but you can see that when I amp up the FM, these oscillators start influencing each other, right? So FM here is coming from oscillator 2, meaning that this is now influencing or shaping the tone of oscillator 1, right? You can see that. This one's getting FM from oscillator 2 as well. But at the same time, that FM triggers this distortion mode because it's on an aux send, meaning this pulse is not going to fire off until you give it FM. And then it starts pulling it apart and the FM kicks in. That would probably sound better in a higher octave. I can just go ahead and just put this in a higher octave here. See? Yeah, it sounds good with the higher octave. Your mileage may vary, right? All right, so that's FM right here. The oscillator mix here actually, so as you can see, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but oscillator 3 is off currently, right? So if you add oscillator mix, you finally get oscillator 3. Now here's an interesting point. Why would you want unison on a mono bass sound, right? You can, it just, to me, it doesn't really matter that if you have waveforms that are moving at separate speeds, if it's a low note, it's gonna sound good regardless because it's a mono bass sound, right? However, one trick that you can do, and Serum puts this right in your face. When you look at Serum on the sub oscillator, it has direct out right there on the bottom. So one trick that you can do if you want to just kind of avoid the whole phasing on the lower end and keep your the bottom of your bass really solid is instead of doing this oscillator mix here, what I might do is I might say, all right, let's go to factory and just hit basic shapes. Now let's take out the movement. Let's disconnect it from LFO1. So now we just have a straight sine wave, right? Instead of going to filter 2, there's the direct out button, right? So you can put your bass sound or your low sub oscillator in a bass going directly out, and watch this. If I go over here and I add an EQ, right? Just add an EQ. And now that EQ is going to make sure that because I've added a high pass filter here, those other two sounds are going to kind of be cut off at the low end, leaving room for that other sine wave to be added. Check this out. Turn it up. So as you can see on our oscilloscope, it drastically changed. Now we've got a sine wave on the low end, but everything else is being EQ'd out up here. Change the position of this. But it still sounds good, right? Because you have that low sine wave driving it. Let me just solo the track so you guys can hear the difference. That sounds good to me, right? Because you're still getting all that goodness from these oscillators. It's kind of overdriven now, but it sounds cool, right? It's interesting. You got extra effects here, right? So all of these techniques combined, that's what makes a good ambient bass. So think about this. You want subtle movement. You want it to be interesting. You want it to be unpredictable in a way. You want it to have a foundation, right? And if you can do that, if you can combine all of these techniques together, you're gonna make bass that sounds interesting to the ear. It gives the track a foundation to live on, and at the same time, makes it feel like things are still in motion. Even though you're dealing with long static notes, there's still that sense that, wow, this is going somewhere. I'm not just sticking my feet in the ground, or it doesn't sound static on the bottom end. You want a little bit of motion. I can't emphasize that enough. Just a little bit of motion goes a really long way. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Tutorials like this are really fun for me because they're like just subtle hints, right? Just little clues, if you will. Everything that you can get as a producer, every subtle clue into what might be the next level for you adds to your arsenal, it adds to your toolkit. And that's what I'm here to do. So if you want to learn more, you know where to find me. Extra content, as always, is on Patreon. We got ambient tutorials over there that I'm doing every single week. Tons of extra content, presets, and if you want these patches, not this one, but I'm gonna create 5 ambient patches and make them as a companion to this video. So if you want those patches, I'm gonna put them up on Patreon directly after this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I truly appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Happy music making. Stay inspired, and as always, keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. My name is Chris from Signs of Life, and I'll see you all in the next one.